How's everybody doing today? Today I just wanted to do a little video which kind of expands on a typical if statement and shows you two alternatives that you can use. One is an if-else series and the other is referred to as a switch statement. They pretty much do the same thing, but in some cases they're a little bit more useful. I'm just going to go back to our original example of the first if statement series that we did. We had a situation where rate was determined by level. So if I was a level 1, my rate was 8, level 2, rate was 10, and level 3, rate was 12. So I set up three if statements. If you remember, I've got the if keyword. My condition has to be in parentheses. Level equal 1, the double equal sign checks for equality. If this is true, it sets my rate equal to 8. So that should be just a tiny bit of a review. What I could have done instead of these three separate if statements was what's referred to as an if-else series. It's very, very similar. The first setup is identical. The first 5 lines of code are the same. The only difference is instead of having a second if statement all by itself, I have an else if. And then I go through for level 2, and then I have an else if, and then I go through for my level 3. And then I have a trailing else at the bottom. Now, this has a couple advantages. One is, if it finds one of these if statements that's true in the else if series, it executes it and then it jumps to the very bottom, which would be right here. So it can be a tiny bit faster, because up here, if you got three separate if statements, it has to evaluate each of them every single time it runs through the code. Here, if it happens to be the first one is true, it evaluates it, executes this code inside it, and then it just jumps to the end. Now, in a tiny little program like this, you're not going to see any time savings, but if you had a large program with, say, 400 possibilities for if statements, and you have an if-else series instead, you could see some significant time savings. The other thing it has is what's referred to as a trailing else. And what this does, if none of your if statements above are true, it automatically executes the trailing else. So what I put here was, I'm assuming that if none of these were true, the user must have given me invalid information. So I just have a message box that says I was given invalid information. The trailing else is optional. You don't have to have one, but it does give you kind of a nice little option. Now, the last one I'm going to show you is referred to as a switch statement. Okay, remember, all three of these do the exact same thing. It's just they're slightly different ways to do it. Now, if you're using a switch statement, you have to specify a variable which you're going to use to be in this switch statement, kind of the variable that determines. Since level determines rate, level is the variable that we're going to use in our switch statement. The other thing about this that's kind of unique is you have to use an integer here. So if I had level declared as a double, this would not work. Switch statements are kind of nice. You just set up as many different cases as you have. We had 3 cases, so I've got case 1, colon, rate equals 8, break, case 2, rate equals 9, break, case 3, rate equals 12, break. It also gives us a very similar thing at the end, which is referred to as default, which is almost the same as this trailing else. Okay, if none of these turn out to be true, it just executes the default. Anyhow, so here's just a couple different ways that you can do something that's going to be very similar to an if statement, but with a slightly different functionality. Remember, you can always use just your standard if statement, and that's going to work fine, but for some reason, if you want to use the else if series, or if you want to use a switch statement, now you should be able to do so. Anyhow, hopefully this video was helpful. We'll see you next time.